We have four phenomenal impact investors who have experience in private equity, venture capital, and presently working in the field of impact investing. This session is going to be moderated by Mahesh Kanumuri. Mahesh Kanumuri is the managing director and founder of Arivali Partners, where he provides investment and advisory services to social enterprises. He has over 20 years experience in venture capital, management consulting, and operating experience. Mahesh was the general partner at a 260 million early stage venture capital fund in Silicon Valley. He invested, nurtured the growth and successful exits of several technology companies. He then moved to India to work with social impact companies. I personally know Mahesh for the last 20 years and repeatedly reach out to him for his strategic advice. Please join me in welcoming Mahesh Kanumuri on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Anu, for the warm introduction. So as Anu was saying, we have a fantastic set of panelists in the impact space, all the way from the early stage, seed angel investments to very late stage, right? So let me just do a very brief introduction for the folks who are here. I'll start off with Kumar Ganapathy. Many of you might know him. Kumar is actually a serial entrepreneur, a very successful serial entrepreneur in the Silicon Valley, had multiple exits. And over the past couple of years, he has had the interest and actually has formed a fund now to invest in very early stage impact investments in India. Welcome, Kumar.
Thank you, Mahesh.
Next, we have Arvind Agrawal. Arvind actually also has a very interesting background, comes from Jharkhand, but he has worked in private equity, asset management in India, in Dubai, in the US, went to start his own BPO company, then has actually moved into the impact space. Has got a fund called C4D Ventures, which is based out of Netherlands, India, and also Indonesia. They do some very interesting work. Arvind, welcome.
Thank you, Mahesh.
We have Abhijit Ray, who actually was a founder of Unitas Capital, is the founder of Unitas Capital, rather. And they actually are one of the leading investment bankers in India in the impact space. They do all the way from early stage to late stage. And I think one of the interesting reputations that they have is that there are some pretty large deals in India. I think I was talking to Abhijit, the last deal they have closed actually on Pune is about 650 crores, right? So in fact, that tells us the maturity of this impact space, and Abhijit and his company have been very instrumental in facilitating some of those deals. Welcome, Abhijit. And
thank you, Mahesh.
Welcome, everybody, right? So we'll get started with the panel discussion. Let me start with Kumar, right? I think Melanie asked Maya the first question, which is, why are we doing what we are doing? I think that's a great question to start with. I'll also start with the same question. Kumar, we'll go with you, right? You had opportunities to do many things. You could have invested in the normal tech companies, made fantastic returns. You have been very successful at it. Why impact investments for you?
Yeah. Thanks, Mahesh. Thanks for giving us the opportunity. Good morning, everyone. So as you guys know, my background has been, I've been in Silicon Valley, a tech entrepreneur, gone through venture capital, focused on what I call the ability to create, growth ventures out of nothing, but focused mostly on the upper middle class to the affluent. We are talking about top of the pyramid and improving the outcomes for and the returns for them. So having done that, I spent the last 10, 15 years doing a bunch of NGO investments and donations, and I realized my sense was we ran into something called donor fatigue. It's the same 90% of the donors who give 10% of these, or 90% of dollars comes from 10% of these donors, and the causes don't seem to scale. They're all great mission-oriented, social entrepreneurs who are trying to break out of this. They're sacrificing their lives, their livelihood potentially, the peak earnings, and going to attack these societal problems. So what we decided was, how do we build a sustainable approach to this impact and think of this as an extension of NGO. So an impact first for-profit approach to early stages where the entrepreneur is the most vulnerable We want to help them. We want to mentor them. We want to provide them the right skill set, the right mentoring, right approach to this. We have walked the path similar to these entrepreneurs before. We know what they feel. So we thought we will work in the early stages, provide them, just after the friends and family round, a small amount of capital, but also a lot of time and engagement from us, and create an opportunity for these guys to go attack a fundamental societal problem. So that's how we came into this. It's been a year or so in the making. We've got, our target is 4 to 5 million. We invest between, 1 to 2 crores per company in the early stages, and provide what we call mentor capital to these agitated entrepreneurs, who want to make a change.
Perfect. Thank you, Kumar. I think it'll be wonderful to get the Silicon Valley scaling perspective into these enterprises, right? I think that'll be fantastic. Thank you so much, Kumar.
Yeah.
So let me just ask Arvind the same question, right? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah, Mahesh, that question can be answered, at least from my perspective, in two phases. So one was when I was 15 years old. I mean, I come from a lower middle class family, and growing up was a bit difficult. And I remember I stumbled upon the English business newspaper where I saw a private equity deal news, and the guy, the picture which was there in the article, the guy looked rich, the guy looked happy. I wanted that both. So at the age of 15, I decided to be in private equity, and since then it has been a meticulous planning towards achieving that, which I did. And then 8 years in corporate private equity, 2 burnouts, a failed entrepreneur or a failed venture, that's when I stumbled upon impact investing. And it's been 7 years since I've been doing that. And I feel my pursuit of happiness is over. So I am happy right now. And I think that's the most important thing in life, that one, you are doing what you want to do, and that also is bringing a lot of happiness to you. So it's challenging, definitely, because you are not doing the typical investments. You are not dealing with the typical companies or business model. Is very challenging, but it's very fulfilling. And I don't think myself, seeing myself doing something else for the rest of my career, or as long as I am alive and kicking.
Wonderful, wonderful. You found your mission, you found your passion, right? Abhijit, same question.
Yeah, thanks, Mahesh, and thanks, everyone. I think it's a interesting push, which I think I got, again, like Arvind, it's a interesting middle class journey, wherein getting a job was much more important first, and then planning what you want to do next. And then I got into an amazing bank called SBI, State Bank of India, which really opens your, like, a bank can be so large and into the remotest of remote corner of the country. And then I landed in SIDBI, one of the amazing development finance institutions in India. And SIDBI gave me a platform to travel the length and breadth of the country, from Kanyakumari to Kashmir to extreme northeast, the difficult of the states. And I was doing development finance, and that's what triggered me. Like, the commercial finance is much more boring than development finance. Development finance is very exciting. You go to support small entities, making handmade papers, to designing what type of motifs would work in a sari, in Bakura or Birbhum, how the metal crafts are done. So all these things became very exciting. And then the phase of microfinance came in. So wherein I was lucky to be part of an amazing team to build the Indian microfinance sector. So once we saw that supporting, I was the first one to work with Bandhan promoter Ghosh, and gave him the first of loan of 20 lakhs. So all these things, I saw the scales happening. So that's when we decided that, it's better to come out of the public sector and development finance institution to help people like Ghosh or others who are there as a promoter or entrepreneur at the grassroots level. Because as a one person, I can only do so much. But when you have multiple people I can support, I mean, that's when it opened up some amazing potential. And that's why I decided that why don't we start an advisory? Because that means I get an option to work with hundreds and hundreds of companies. And that's what has happened over the last 12 years. We worked with more than 120 odd companies, raising more than $3 billion of capital. So that's how I'm into this. And every moment, I mean, the passion to work, because the more I work with entrepreneurs, the more I get excited, because every day is a learning. And, I'm still a novice in this field. I'm super, super passionate and excited to work with amazing entrepreneurs and raise capital for them. And the idea is here to get money from people like Mr. Kumar Ganapati, who's there, who has the money, and to bring the money to the people who really need it here on the ground. So thanks, Mahesh.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, I think one of the things that we'll find very common, both with investors and also with entrepreneurs in this sector, is the passion that they bring, right? It's incredible to see that passion. And it's also incredible to see the difference that both the investors and entrepreneurs are making in people's lives, right? And I think the satisfaction that Arvind and I think Kumar and Abhijit talked about, right, is incredible when you see that. I just relate one personal story. I think what got me excited about this, right? So obviously 10 years or 12 years back when I came to India, it was just a very barren field, new field. But I think those were the heady days when, as Abhijit was saying, microfinance was just being converted from non-profits to for-profits, right? And on the environment side, we had this biodiesel, which was trying to make a dent into this oil crisis, right? So there's one particular company that I was working with where we were helping the rural women do savings, right, in the rural villages where they didn't have any banking access. So this woman was selling flowers to the nearby town, earning money and keeping that money under her mattress. For people who are familiar with rural India, you will find that the men of the household will take that money and spend it on drinking, right? There was no money left. And this woman was obviously in distress. When I went and met her, so I always used to go and meet all of these women in all these villages, right? She was able to now save the past 6 months of income, and it was about 15,000 rupees, a big sum for her, right? And with tears in her eyes, she told me that now she has money to save for her child's education, right? It is that transformational effect that you see on the field, right? I think that's what gives us the satisfaction. And there'll be millions of stories out there, right, that all of us can share and feel proud of. So I'll just go to the next question in terms of what is different about impact investments versus the mainstream investments. Right? As we know, TiEcon is all about mainstream investments, as Kumar talked about, middle class, the affluent, right? Where we are solving the normal problems and obviously making a lot of financial returns, right? Apart from the impact and apart from the sector that we focus on, right? What is different about impact investments? I'll have Arvind go first this time.
Sure, Mahesh. I think, what is different, or rather, I would say what should be different between a VC investment and impact investing, apart from the impact and the sector, is, personally, given the fact that I come from a VC and PE background into impact investing, what I experienced since 2014 is there's a lot of copy paste going on. And I'm sorry to say that, but, impact investing is not about Series A, Series B, Series C, Series F. It's not about valuation. It's not about the valuation game, buying revenue, which series you are on, how soon you can become a unicorn. It's not about that. When a VC-backed company goes down, investors lose money. When a social entrepreneur goes down, people lose livelihoods. And I'm not talking about jobs, right? Because we, particularly at C40 Partners, we focus a lot on rural businesses. And when a business goes down, hope goes down. So don't play that game. It's not the right thing. I mean, if I wanted to play that game, I was better off in my previous avatar. I was making more money for me, for my investor, and that was more fun game. Why should I be here and pretend I'm there? That has to change for investors. That has to change for social entrepreneurs. Everybody overnight has become tech companies because it's easy to raise money. It's easy to get a good valuation to your revenue. That should not be the game. You need to. Everybody needs to understand that what is that you are trying to achieve, and let's not try to copy paste. So I would say that is something which is different, and it should be acknowledged by everybody. And that's how we should go forward.
Great. So I think there's an interesting perspective. It's not about valuation. It's not about the copy paste. Abhijit, from your vantage point of being on the late stage, right? Would you agree with that, or does that, or how would we go towards that particular notion?
No, I think Arvind gave a very good perspective. I'll add on to it because I don't want to differ because we have a lot to do here. So I think rather build on this and say, I'll go by examples also, Mahesh. So I think I'll give you 2 examples to tell you where I'm coming from. So I was trying to work with an entrepreneur who's into healthcare, and he's building a healthcare system, amazing hospitals, 4 hospitals, some 500 beds. And he was very clear that it isn't affordable because he used to do surgeries in 25K. all inclusive, including OPD to food to sending the patient back home, 15 to 25K was the average cost. And they were making profits, and he was declaring dividend of 15% every year to his investor. And then he wanted to expand. The investors were chasing me, saying that, can you get this guy to think of something else and not 15% IRR? Because he's very particular that I'll not give more than 15%. I mean, as a dividend, right? There's nothing wrong. I mean, he was building an impact business. So I think the lens has to be slightly different. And that's where I think the impact investor comes into the picture. So why to push that guy to think of that you have to give me a 28% IRR? Or a 16, 18% IRR. 15 is 15, good. I mean, how many company consistently gives you a 15% IRR? So the perspective is slightly different, and that's why I go by examples to tell that yes, this is the case of. So I think it is a question of when the impact investor looks at it, there is a lens which comes in. First, is saying, is there an impact? When a mainstream investor comes in, it's more important, is the investment, first of all, is going at a certain pace to give me a return. So I think it's the approach. See, both of them need a return. As Arvind said, both of them need a return. But the way you approach it, I think that's where it's a difference, right? Today, every investor, almost everyone, where IFC and CDC is putting their money, has to go through a ESG. But is it by design or is it by default, right? So that's where I think the difference. The impact investors are by design, okay, whereas I think mainstream is by default.
So it's a different breed of investors. So I think for people who are focused on impact should definitely go after with the impact investors, right? So Kumar, I think you have a different perspective from a valuation standpoint that Arvind talked about, right? How you in fact value companies, which is I think slightly different than. So we can just share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what the gentlemen have mentioned is absolutely correct, right? It's not about for failure of companies, but it's loss of livelihood. So it's a serious business. So the way for us, I'll say sort of three metrics here ultimately, right? We are impact first. We're not returns first investors. We want to clearly see an impact metric. And the success depends as much on the impact metric as opposed to the financial metric for us. So we value the companies that way. We write our term sheet sometimes to say, look, yes, you may miss some of your revenue goals, 3-4 years, the aggressive exponential growth that every entrepreneur imagines. But as long as you hit the impact metrics for us, you are satisfying your mission at some level to us. So that, and our fundamental thesis here is a capital preservation thesis, right? There's a capital with a conscience. We have to give up some returns, is what we believe, to drive a larger goal here. And that's clearly what we're playing at. And, luckily, we don't have any LPs to answer to. So it makes it easier for us to manage it.
Perfect. No, I think these kinds of investors are needed. And the beauty about this impact investment space, that there's a variety of impact structures and investors that are coming in, right? And if you look at the past decade, which has been a phenomenal growth, almost from zero to now to about 750 billion to about 2.1 trillion, however you want to count it, right? And it is debt, it's equity, it's social bonds, it's green bonds, there are all kinds of innovative structures and I guess people like Kumar that are coming in now, right, with preservation of capital. I think it's exciting to see the entire different kinds of structures, right? So actually, I want to, on that innovation side, maybe Vijay, you may comment upon specifically on, let's say, take an example of the innovations that are happening, maybe green bonds or something, so people just get a little bit of a flavor of what's happening here, in addition to standard equity and debt.
Sorry, did you ask me?
Yeah, Abhijit, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so I think, good. So see, a lot of innovations are happening. I think one has to look at the one side, there is a change in approach to how impact investment has to be looked at. What are the type of metrics, as Mr. Kumar was talking about. But I think in the product side, see, early stage, there was no option for debt. So that is something which is opening up. That early stage people used to think only equity investor will back. Now I think slew of debt funds are coming up. So that's one. But in early stage, because most of them, see, if you ask an entrepreneur, he would not like to manage his working capital through an equity fund. It's too costly for it, right? He will make his investment through his equity fund. Why not having a debt come in early as a working capital support? That is one thing which is happening, and a lot of people are coming in to provide early stage debt. That's one of the changes that we are seeing here. Number two, you are talking of a green bond. Obviously, the green bond market is massive. I think India has seen a lot, but it has all come from large corporates or banks. But we have to bring it down to much smaller sizes, because if you look at the size of green bonds we did in India, these are like all above 200-300 crores. So can we make it in smaller pieces? Why I'm saying this is because the entities which really need are not getting it. So I think the innovation now has to happen in the segment wherein we can bring in a lot more smaller ticket to the most of the companies which are working in this space, because that is important. And in many cases, you don't need equity because these are profitable entities. You need to only lower the size. So I think, as you know, I mean, billions of dollars has been done by FC on green bonds, but it's mostly with larger institutions. So I think we have started seeing smaller investors coming into the picture with the specific funds being set up, like Blue Orchard. The new trend that's happening that this will come up, but it's early today.
Right. I think we are hoping for more innovations to happen, so the access to capital is there for the smaller entities. So Kumar, on the access to capital, right? So what would it take for more HNIs to get excited about this sector and contribute, right? So how would we in fact scale the entire impact investments from the early stage, right? So obviously you've made a pioneering effect from the Silicon Valley. So what would it take to have more of your ilk?
Correct. So I think we look at it as two phases. Initially, we are starting with people who have an impact bent, who want to give back, and who have enough capital to say, let's start getting engaged in this, right? So each person's life is in different stages. So we can engage them passively, we can engage them semi-actively, we can engage them actively. So we didn't set up a traditional LPGP structure for it. We set up as a partnership structure that we could scale this to more and more HNIs who want to give. Today we have set up a little higher minimum bar, but we'll build out a long tail set of HNIs who want to not just give money to the right people, but involved in the decision and voices, but also follow up with the actual on the ground mentoring, because the time actually matters more to early stages than money, in my opinion. And that's the key we are trying to build out. And it's a slow process. We have to find self-selecting investors who agree with our vision and want to do this. And this is not, quick hit. It's not Forbes cover. It's not going to make, any big returns, but it's going to give long-term satisfaction and hope.
Perfect. So I think we are running out of time. So I would want to conclude this by asking each one of you very quickly, any tidbit about yourself that you want to share that would make a personal connection with the entrepreneurs. Kumar first, Arvind, Abhijit. We have only a couple of minutes left, right? So, and I want to conclude with a...
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of it, but my life is fairly boring, is what I would tell you. Net, I'm what I call an accidental entrepreneur. Not many people know this. I didn't do this by design. My dad was a doctor. He had a successful business. Growing up, I watched him drive the impact in India to actual people. And I wanted to be a doctor. I joined IIT even 3 years into it. I tried to switch into a doctor's profession. So I failed. I couldn't get into any of these exams. I wasn't good enough. So I settled to become an engineer and entrepreneur. I found my path this way.
Great. Thank you. So Arvind, very brief, one sentence.
Mahesh, if it's fine, before that, I would also like to respond to the previous question.
But we don't have time, unfortunately, Arvind, unless the 1 minute or 1 second.
30 seconds each on the previous question, 30 seconds. There is a lot of innovation happening from the promoter side. I think the innovation is required from the investor side, which Kumar, is doing. Because in India, if you see, there is no separate, structure where a social venture fund can structure. There is legally in AIF, but it doesn't incentivize the LPs and the GP to operate under that. So I think there's a need to have innovation on that front. Secondly, on your final tidbit, I think, for me, it is about my own experience as a failed entrepreneur. So, I did a rural BPO, I failed miserably, and I understand how it feels when you are on the other side of the table. And this is my second venture, which I started in 2017 as a co-founder along with my partners. So, there has to be a bit more trust between the investors and the companies. I think we need to understand each other a bit more, and it should not, when things are fine, everybody wants credit for that. When things don't go well, it's a blame game. So I think, both of us understand each other a bit better than what everybody thinks.
Thank you. Abhijit, 10 seconds.
Yeah, I think, neither like Mr. Kumar or like Arvind didn't get a chance to become an engineer or a doctor. So I thought what I can't do, I can become an investment banker at least. So that was the only option left to me probably. And that's where I'm working and enjoying every day, working with amazing entrepreneurs across the globe. So thank you, Mahesh.
So I'll conclude with a small poem. The tidbit about myself is that I have started to write songs and also compose songs. So I'll just conclude with a poem. And actually, there's one question from the audience which talks about, are there impact investments who invest in pure impact and not returns? Yes, there are huge class of investors, foundations, and everybody else. That actually was a traditional impact investment. Investment with returns is just the beginning. But I think the traditional class of investments have there. There are enough foundations who do philanthropic work. So the poem is about a tie that binds us. A tie that binds us to uplift humanity. A tie that binds us to uplift humanity, environment, and all-round equity. A tie that binds us to pursue a mission. A tie that binds us to pursue a mission where purpose and profits join in a mission. A tie that binds us to innovate and interact. A tie that binds us to innovate and interact, pioneering paths to create of impact. A tie that makes us, a tie that binds us to make a difference. A tie that binds us to make a difference. Every effort, small or large, of great essence. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining. And it was a wonderful panel. Thank you, Anu. Thank you for the organizers for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you, Mahesh.
Thank you, Mahesh. Thank you for tie. Yeah.
Mahesh, that was a beautiful poem, a tie that binds us to make a difference. So this was phenomenal. Thank you, everybody. So I think another big message was, when you are into impact investing, it's not about valuation. It's not about copy paste of the traditional venture capital. It's about driving a larger goal, a tie that binds us to make a difference. Thank you very much again.